Aunt left my 7-year-old daughter alone in a freezing car for hours, and when she came home, she whispered, she said not to tell you or it would ruin Christmas. What happened next changed everything. My daughter, Lily, came home from a family visit and quietly said, Auntie told me to stay in the parking lot while they went to the toy store. I was there alone for 4 hours. I didn't scream. That moment, when those words left her mouth, I felt my blood run cold. I was standing by the trunk, my breath catching as the snow fell quietly around us, unaware of the storm that was about to unfold. Lily was holding her small travel bag in one hand and her stuffed fox under her arm. She looked tired, the kind of tired you get after too many late nights with cousins, too much sugar, not enough sleep. I thought it was the usual, the after-effects of a few days with family. I buckled her into the car and we began the drive home. I was chatting with my husband about the leftovers my mom promised us when Lily spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. Auntie told me to stay in the parking lot while they went to the toy store. I blinked, looking at her in the rearview mirror. What do you mean by that? I asked, my voice trembling slightly. Lily didn't meet my eyes. She kept staring out of the window and spoke in a quiet, defeated tone. They said they'd be quick, but it got dark. I stayed in the car. I played games for a while. Then my tablet died. I got cold but didn't want to open the door. I thought maybe they forgot. Then she told me not to tell you, or it would ruin Christmas. That was it. That exact moment. I didn't scream. I didn't yell. But my entire body went cold, and I felt a fury build inside me like nothing I had ever felt before. My hands shook, but I didn't say a word to Lily. I just turned to my husband and said, drive to their house. The silence in the car was unbearable. My husband knew something was wrong, but he didn't ask questions. I was trembling, not crying, just shaking with the force of everything I was holding back. My fingers curled and UNC curled in my lap. I could feel the pressure building behind my eyes, but I wouldn't let it out. Not yet. 20 minutes later, we pulled up to their house. It looked like something out of a holiday catalog, twinkling lights on the porch, a wreath on the door, fake snow dusting the windowsill. Inside, I could hear the sounds of laughter, the clinking of plates. Claire's kids were yelling about Nerf guns. I didn't knock. I opened the door and walked in like I owned the place. My mom was in the kitchen icing cupcakes. My dad was half asleep in his recliner. Claire was sitting on the couch, her legs up, wearing those silly fuzzy socks she always bought on sale after Halloween. Her husband was pouring hot cider into mugs. There were already open presents scattered across the floor. Claire looked up at me, smiled, and said, "Hey, you're early." I didn't say a word. I walked straight to her, grabbed her by her messy blonde bun, the one she twisted up when she was too lazy to wash her hair, and yanked her off the couch. She shrieked as one of the mugs dropped. My mom gasped. Claire fell to her knees before she could react, and I didn't give her time to ask questions. I slapped her across the face. Full force. The sound cracked through the living room like a gunshot. She scrambled backward, clutching her face, stunned. My brother-in-law stepped forward, but my husband immediately stepped between us, making it clear no one was getting near me. My dad stood up, confused. "Nancy, what the hell is going on?" I turned to face Claire, breathing heavily, still standing. 4 hours, I said, my voice sharp. You left my daughter alone in the freezing car for 4 hours. Everything froze. My mom was the first to move, dropping the tray of cupcakes she had been frosting, the sound of metal hitting the tile echoing through the house. Frosting splattered across the floor, the oven door, and her apron. She didn't even look down. My dad stood slowly, his face pale, like he'd just processed something deep in his gut, something that could no longer be ignored. Claire was still on the floor, holding her cheek, blinking up at me like I had just dropped out of the sky and lost my mind. Her face was flushed, but more with embarrassment than fear. It was as if I had embarrassed her in front of her perfect little world, and now she didn't know what to do. Then she opened her mouth, and what came out was the most delusional thing she could have said. "Calm down." She was fine. My husband shifted next to me, not speaking, just subtly positioning himself like he was preparing for what might come next. I took a step forward, and he reached out with a gentle hand on my arm, keeping me from lunging at Claire again. I wasn't going to hit her. Not yet. But if she said anything else like that. "Fine," I said, my voice colder than I felt. Claire stood up, brushing herself off like it was no big deal, glancing around the room as if she was waiting for someone to back her up. She was in the car. She had her tablet. I cracked a window. "It wasn't that cold, Nancy. We weren't gone that long." She didn't even cry. I just stared at her. "Do you even understand what you did?" You left a 7-year-old child alone in a car in December. For 4 hours, I said slowly, each word biting into her. Claire scoffed, crossing her arms. It wasn't 4 hours. Don't be dramatic. Maybe 2. I checked on her when we came out of the first store. She was fine. That was the last thread snapping. I turned to Lily, who was standing in the hallway holding her stuffed fox, watching everything unfold like it wasn't even real. I looked back at Claire. You told her to lie to me, I said. You told her that if she said anything, it would ruin Christmas. Claire tried to roll her eyes, but it didn't work. Her face was blotchy now, her mouth twitching with frustration. I just didn't want her to make a big deal about it, she muttered. You always overreact to everything. That's when her oldest son, Eli, walked in, a grin on his face, holding a plastic toy store bag. Mommy, look what I found, he said. This is the one we got after the pizza place. Remember the day Ava had to stay in the car because you said she would complain too much? He stopped, looked around the room, and suddenly went silent. Claire's face drained of color, turning ashen. My mom stepped back like she had been slapped, and my dad looked at Ava for the first time all night, really looked at her. He walked over to her, knelt down, and gently asked, Honey, how long were you in the car that day? Lily held up 4 fingers. That was it. That was all that needed to be said. No one spoke. Not even Claire. Then my husband, his voice low and firm, said to me, Call her godmother. She's not staying here tonight. I nodded without another word. We walked out, Lily in tow, leaving Claire, my mom, and my dad frozen in the living room, no one saying a thing. We walked out without a word, and the door clicked behind us. The moment it closed, I felt a kind of weight lift off my shoulders, but only slightly. The anger still simmered in me, hot and unforgiving. It wasn't just about leaving Lily alone in that freezing car, it was everything that led to that moment. It was the way Claire always seemed to do the bare minimum and then act as if she were the martyr. We got in the car and drove to Lily's godmother's house. She didn't ask questions, just opened the door when we pulled into her driveway. As soon as Lily saw her, she simply nodded, understanding the unspoken bond between them. It was like they had always known each other in a way that surpassed the superficialities of family. Lily didn't cry. She just walked in, climbed onto the couch, wrapped herself in the blanket, and turned on her favorite cartoon. The sound of her giggling again, her comfort restored, was like medicine to me. She was the only thing that mattered. She didn't ask about Claire. She didn't ask why we left, why things had changed. I sat there beside her, the weight of what had happened finally starting to settle on me. I looked at my phone, saw the text messages from Claire filling up the inbox. I didn't respond. The guilt trips, the accusations, the deflections, I knew them all too well. But it wasn't just the absence of an apology that made me ignore them, it was the realization that Claire had never taken responsibility for anything. Everything was always someone else's fault. When we got back home that night, I didn't take off my coat. I walked straight into the kitchen, opened my laptop, and logged into the joint bank account I had set up with Claire 3 years ago, when she had fallen on hard times. She had never really gotten back on her feet. I had paid her phone bill, her rent, her car insurance more times than I could count. I bought her groceries, took care of her kids when she was overwhelmed, made excuses for her when she couldn't handle things. I was the one who kept things afloat for her, even when she didn't show any sign of trying to take responsibility for herself. Tonight, I was done. I transferred my portion out of the account and froze it. The paperwork for the account removal was already in progress. It didn't take long. I stared at the screen for a few minutes afterward, trying to find the words that had been stuck in my throat all night. But there were no words. Nothing could undo the damage she had caused, nothing could fix the betrayal that had become the pattern of Claire's life. My husband walked in. He didn't ask what I was doing. He knew. We didn't speak for the rest of the night. I tried to sleep, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw Lily curled up in the back seat of that car. Alone. Cold. Forgotten. My heart clenched every time I thought about it. No child should ever experience that. No child should ever have to wonder if the people who are supposed to take care of them will even remember they exist. By morning, the calls started. First, it was my mom. Nancy, call me back, please, she begged. Then, my dad. One short voicemail, just saying, we need to talk. It's about Claire. I didn't respond to either of them. I couldn't bring myself to pick up the phone. How could I? There was nothing they could say to fix what Claire had done. Then the text messages from Claire started coming through in full force. It was a long rant, a guilt trip wrapped in a false apology, and more of the same, accusing me of overreacting, making me out to be the villain. The words blended into one long, incoherent paragraph. She blamed me for leaving Lily with her. She wanted to know why I couldn't just help her out when she was struggling. She even tried to guilt-trip me for not understanding the pressure she was under. I stared at the messages. I didn't answer. I didn't even delete them. I wanted them to sit there, as a reminder of exactly who she was. She never once acknowledged how much she hurt Lily, how she made her feel abandoned and small, just like always. It was always about her, never about anyone else. Around noon, my mom called again. This time, I answered. "We know everything," she said before I even had the chance to speak. "Claire came clean." "Sort of. Eli said something first, and then Lily told us everything." "What did she say?" I asked, my voice flat, emotionless. My mom hesitated. She said she just wanted to enjoy a few hours with her boys. She didn't want to deal with looking after someone else's child. She was overwhelmed. She didn't think it was a big deal. I took a deep breath, swallowing the wave of frustration that washed over me. "And is that supposed to make it okay?" I asked slowly. "Is that supposed to make it okay that she left my daughter alone in a freezing car for hours, without even thinking about her safety?" My mom was silent for a moment, and then she spoke softly, "Nancy, we can't excuse it." "I know that." I didn't respond right away. I didn't need to. I had already made up my mind. This was the end. I cut her off. No more gifts, no more bills, no more money. I already closed the account. She's on her own. My mom didn't argue. She didn't try to change my mind. She just sighed and said, "I don't know what happened to her, Nancy. I really don't." I ended the call without saying goodbye. I felt no need to explain myself anymore. That afternoon, I went through every closet in the house. Every bag meant for Claire's boys, every gift, every stocking stuffer, every toy I had picked out with care. All of it was gone, loaded into the car. I didn't even think twice as I drove straight to the store. What couldn't be returned, I donated. Even the extra gloves I had bought for Claire, the ones she'd always said she couldn't find, I left in the donation box. No more. When I got home that night, Lily was already asleep, curled up in the blanket. Her face was peaceful, no sign of the distress she had felt earlier. She was content, and that was all that mattered. My husband and I didn't talk. The air in the house was heavy. I didn't want to think about Claire or her actions. It felt like the night stretched on forever. But it was over. The decision had been made. There was no going back. The next few days passed in a haze. Christmas was quiet, not the loud, chaotic kind of holiday we used to have. The usual hustle was gone, replaced with a calm that felt surreal. The only sound in the house was the occasional laugh from Lily as she played with her godmother's daughter. She was safe now. She was happy. But the unease still gnawed at me. The knowledge that Claire had so casually abandoned her, that she thought it was acceptable to treat my daughter that way, still lingered like a heavy shadow in the back of my mind. I tried not to think about Claire. I focused on Lily. I watched her laugh, watched her spin in the living room, her stuffed fox in one hand, her favorite blanket wrapped around her like a superhero's cape. I forced myself to smile, to focus on the present. It wasn't easy. The weight of everything Claire had done was still there, but I wasn't going to let it affect Lily. She deserved better than that. She deserved peace, safety, and a future free from the drama and toxicity Claire had brought into our lives. 2 days after Christmas, there was a knock at the door. I wasn't expecting anyone. My husband was still in the kitchen, prepping for dinner, and Lily was snuggled up on the couch. I peeked through the window and saw my parents standing on the porch. Behind them, standing in the cold without a coat, was Claire. She was holding a single, wrinkled gift in her hands, a pitiful attempt at offering something, though I could tell already it was nothing more than a prop for her show of remorse. I opened the door. My parents stood there, their faces grim, their eyes not quite meeting mine. They looked as though they were bracing for something, but I wasn't sure what. Claire didn't say anything at first. She just stood there, shivering slightly, her hair tangled, cheeks blotchy from the cold. The gift she held looked like it had been squeezed so tightly it had begun to lose its shape. I didn't even bother to look at it. I could already tell what it was, an empty gesture. Another attempt to cover up the hurt she had caused. "Come in," I said, not offering an ounce of warmth. I stepped aside, but I didn't invite Claire in. Only my parents were allowed past the threshold. Claire hesitated, staring at me like I had just pulled the rug out from under her, but she didn't move. The engine of her car was still running, the exhaust drifting into the cold air like smoke signals. The boys weren't with her. That detail hit me harder than it should have. She hadn't brought her children, just herself. Just the act. My parents walked in, and I closed the door behind them with a definitive click. The silence was deafening. For a moment, nobody said anything. My mom stood with her arms crossed, staring at the floor, while my dad perched himself on the edge of the couch, not fully settling in. "She's not sleeping," my mom said quietly, breaking the silence. "She hasn't eaten. She keeps pacing, whispering to herself. She says she made the worst mistake of her life." I nodded, but didn't respond. Claire's words didn't matter to me anymore. The hurt she caused was too great. She had already crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. My dad spoke this time, his voice low but steady. "She wants to apologize. She's afraid of how far this has gone." I stood still for a moment, looking out the window, trying to calm the boiling anger inside me. My dad had always been the voice of reason in our family. But now, I realized, his idea of what was right and wrong had been compromised by his love for Claire. "Do you think I'm the one who took it too far?" I asked, my voice sharp and cutting. "Do you think I overreacted by cutting her off after what she did?" My mom didn't answer immediately. The silence that followed was thick, each word unspoken heavy with meaning. Finally, she sighed. "No, I don't think you did. I don't know how we got here." "I'll tell you how we got here," I said, feeling the heat rise in my chest. Claire learned her whole life that if she ignored a problem long enough, it would go away. And now, look at where we are. She didn't even have the decency to be honest with me. She lied, manipulated, and blamed me. I'm done. I don't need her anymore. My mom seemed to shrink at my words. She didn't argue this time. She simply sat down, her hands trembling as she folded them on her lap. I could see the guilt weighing heavily on her. But I couldn't feel bad for her. I couldn't feel bad for Claire either. Then, suddenly, there was another knock at the door. I opened it, and there she was, standing in the cold, holding that same sad excuse for a gift. Her face was pale, her lips trembling, but she didn't speak. She didn't say she was sorry. She just stood there, waiting for someone, anyone, to give her permission to come inside. "I didn't think you'd actually shut me out," she said finally, her voice weak. I didn't respond. I stood there, holding the door open just enough to let her see the house behind me. I didn't invite her in. I didn't need to hear whatever excuse she had. "Here," she said, pushing the gift toward me. "I got this for Lily before everything happened. It's not a bribe." I looked at her, unamused. The gift didn't matter. Nothing she could do could undo the damage. I stepped back slightly and closed the door behind me. "You're not sorry, Claire. You're just caught. That's the difference." She took a step back, but before she left, she muttered something I didn't expect to hear. "I lost my job last week. That's why I left her in the car. I didn't want anyone to see me falling apart." Her voice dropped, as if she expected me to suddenly sympathize with her. I didn't want them to think anything was wrong. I didn't give her the satisfaction of responding immediately. I stared at her, feeling the anger bubble up once more. "You could have told me. You could have asked for help, Claire. But instead, you chose to leave my daughter alone in the cold. You chose that. Don't try to make it about your pain, because it's not. It's about hers." Claire didn't argue this time. She simply walked away, holding that sad, crushed gift in her hands, leaving me standing in the doorway. My mom didn't follow her. Neither did my dad. They stayed inside, waiting for her to leave. But I didn't care about Claire anymore. I couldn't. She had crossed a line I would never let her come back from. The door closed with a soft thud behind me as I watched Claire retreat into the darkness of the street. The cold air filled the house like a reminder of everything that had happened. I didn't need to look back at my parents. I already knew what they were thinking. I had seen their eyes, wide, heavy with the weight of things left unsaid. They knew. They could no longer defend Claire. I made my way back to the living room where Lily was still curled up on the couch, her little feet tucked under a blanket, eyes glued to her favorite show. The peaceful, innocent sound of her laughter seemed to echo in the room, a stark contrast to the turmoil in my chest. My parents were sitting there, uncertain, awkward. My dad had leaned back in his chair, his hands folded in front of him, as though he were deep in thought. He had always been a man of few words, but now, I saw the confusion written on his face. "How did it get to this point?" he finally asked, his voice gentle but burdened with the years of blind loyalty to Claire. I stood there for a moment, staring out the window, watching as the snow continued to fall, thick and soft like the silence that now enveloped the house. I couldn't answer him right away. The answer was simple, but also too complex to summarize in one sentence. How did it get to this point? It got to this point because for years, Claire had walked through life with a sense of entitlement, expecting everyone around her to clean up her messes, to forgive her without effort, and to let her off the hook every time she crossed a line. But that had changed. It didn't have to be this way, I finally said, my voice barely a whisper. She could have apologized. She could have shown real remorse. But instead, she made it about herself. She made it about how hard her life is, how overwhelmed she felt, as though that could erase what she did. I looked back at my parents, trying to explain it in a way that they would understand. She left Lily in a freezing car. She made her wait there for hours, alone. And then, she had the nerve to tell her to lie to me. She made my daughter believe that if she told me what happened, she'd ruin Christmas. My mom winced, and I could see the regret creeping into her eyes. But it wasn't enough. I needed more than that from her. I needed her to acknowledge what Claire had done and stop excusing her actions. I don't think she ever really understood what she did, I continued. Not just to Lily, but to me. To all of us. She never takes responsibility for anything. She always expects people to forgive her without change. She does the bare minimum and expects the world to love her for it. There was a long silence as I sat down beside Lily on the couch. She glanced up at me, her innocent blue eyes full of curiosity. She must have noticed the change in the atmosphere, the shift that had taken place over the last few days. She didn't ask questions, though. She just turned back to the screen, her small fingers clutching the blanket tighter around her. My dad let out a sigh, and I could see him struggling with the situation. He had always been the peacemaker, the one who kept the family together, but Claire had pushed him too far this time. His silence spoke volumes. "I'm not going to lie to you, Nancy," he said slowly. "I don't know where we go from here. We can't undo what's been done. We can't change the way she treated Lily. But we can make sure it doesn't happen again." My mother's eyes softened as she finally spoke. "You're right. You're right about all of it. And I know we've been enabling her. We've always made excuses for her, but that's not helping anyone. It's not helping her, and it's not helping you or Lily." She paused, her voice thick with emotion. "But we can't let this tear us apart. We're still family, Nancy. I'm sorry for not seeing it sooner." I nodded, but my mind was already 1,000 miles away. I wasn't sure what family even meant anymore. I'd spent so many years trying to hold everything together, trying to keep the peace, to protect everyone, including Claire. But what had that gotten me? More lies. More heartache. More manipulation. As the evening wore on, I couldn't shake the heaviness that hung in the air. I could feel the weight of the decision I'd made, the consequence of cutting Claire out of our lives for good. It wasn't easy. It never would be. But I knew in my heart it was the right choice. I couldn't let her hurt my daughter, not now and not ever again. The next morning, the phone rang again. I didn't need to look at the caller ID to know who it was. Claire. The text messages had started up again, long paragraphs filled with the same excuses. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean it, I was just overwhelmed." The usual. The same tired lines she always used. But this time, I didn't feel the need to read them. I deleted them without hesitation. It wasn't about the apology anymore. It wasn't about whether or not she regretted what she had done. It was about her actions. And her actions spoke louder than any apology ever could. A few days later, Lily and I were sitting in the living room, sipping hot cocoa. The fire crackled softly in the hearth, and the soft glow of the Christmas tree lights reflected off the walls. There was peace in the air now, a calm that I hadn't felt in months. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe again. I looked at my daughter, the most important person in my life, the one I'd fought so hard to protect. Her laughter filled the room as she made another round of popcorn and set it on the coffee table for us to share. She didn't ask about Claire. She didn't need to. She had already moved on, already healing from the wound that Claire had caused. And that's when I realized that sometimes, cutting someone out isn't just about protecting yourself. It's about protecting those you love. It's about putting their happiness, their well-being, and their safety first. I knew I had done the right thing. I knew I would never go back. And as I watched Lily laugh, her joy so pure and unburdened, I knew that the family we had built, the life we had now, was worth every bit of heartache it took to get here. Claire was gone from our lives now. And it felt like freedom. The door, the one Claire had hoped to walk back through, stayed closed. And for the first time, I was at peace with that. Thank you for watching the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Have a nice day.